Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another podcast. We have changed our podcast name, so we're going to go ahead and move forward with the Fatherhood Unplugged. We have a very special guest today. I'm going to go ahead and let Van introduce, and we'll kind of just talk and see what we can learn today.
Yeah, everyone, we have a special guest today, like Brian said. He's a longtime friend of mine. He's a dad. He's a husband. For me, we've known each other, what has it been, sophomore year, freshman year in college. So
Mhm.
that's, ooh, I'm old. Let's see, how long is
That'd be
that?
in a while. I
Yeah,
think it's over 10. Yeah,
over 10 years. Okay.
yeah. I put it
But
that
yeah,
way.
I mean, he's been a long time friend of mine. He's kind of, I don't know if I've always told him, but he's sort of been a mentor of mine. And I kind of looked up to him ever since we kind of met, and he kind of got me on the right path in terms of health and fitness. And I know that's something that
Mhm.
Brian is uh is very interested in as well. So welcome, Long. Uh, so
Well, thanks for having me.
first
Yeah.
question to you is, let people know who you are and what does it mean to you to be a dad?
Yeah. So like Van introduced, my name is Long. I live in Minnesota, around right in the suburban area, Maiden Grove. So right around the Twin City area, not too far from that. So I work here as an engineer at Boston Scientific, so just manufacturing, supporting, the company build and make catheters and stents and basically life-saving devices, medical devices. So that had been, my first time job and had been always now become something that I'm really proud of to be part of. Um, um, so I've been out here in Minnesota since after college. So Van, what would you say? Like, I can't remember, 7 year now? I don't know. 7 year, I would say. Well,
That's
my
about right.
oldest is six, so turning 7. So let's put it that way. Um, but as Van mentioned, what does it mean for me to be a dad? I don't think that definition was ever really answered, right? You cannot get just that drop on you. Right? I mean, that's what it is for me. My first kid wasn't really planet. Um, and we just, we normally do what we did was like, okay, accident, let's go get plan B. Too honest answer, right? And that time we were just, you know, maybe this is part of it, right? Maybe this part of the plan, and we just need to stop that, right? It's not it's not for us to determine when it is their time, right? Like Van probably know, I'm not an atheist, but I don't go to church. I don't practice any religion, but I have a true belief in spirit. And there's a lot of people in our life have passed away, and that part of that just kind of like came over me and just kind of give me the comfort and let me know that day that you need to keep that. So for me, what it means to be a dad is not so much of responsibility, what you have to do, what you have to be part of, and what you need to believe to be, so that your kid could do what you want them to do. That's not what as I define it. Right? That's not what it is for me. It's more so much more spiritual than that, right? It's a cycle of life. It might be somebody that was in our life, and maybe that part of, you know, so for me, it was my dad. That's how I see it. My dad who passed away, I lost a lot of relationship with him after the divorce, when I was about 8 years old. Um, and I haven't spoke to him ever since. The day he passed away, I was still holding grudges and didn't want to come back and see him. That night when he passed away, I broke down, right? And that year I had Liam, right? You know, and that's the part where I feel that, it means something. There's something to it, right? And then that's what it means to me for be a dad is continue that part of life, be part of that, you know, be part of my kid life, whatever that means, right? And I'm continuing to be finding that still. So I don't really truly have an answer for what it means to be a dad, but I want to be part of it, whatever that means. What I mean for what I guess what does that mean for you guys then, to be a dad?
I mean, Brian, I don't know, this is getting deep really quick, but
That
I
is, I
know
like it.
I know Brian, you have some similarities to what Long's saying. I don't know. Do you want to share anything?
Yeah. So like your kind of like chunk here is actually, like I said, we do have a lot of similarities actually. Where our dads were less than ideal. Like I speak, my dad was less than ideal. I think it's a nice way I put it. Where for me, the big thing when I had kids, and I kind of planned, like I planned for my first, my second was a surprise, and my third was planned, just a little more planned for. But it's always for me been I wanted to break the generational patterns that we had as, like my grandpa had a bunch of kids, and then he's like, hey, I'm out. Which is kind of like not a great move. So like he left his 5 boys, started another family. With my dad, it was a very similar thing where he had me and he was like, hey, you know what? I'm out. I didn't want to do that with my kids. So it was definitely, how can I be there? How can I change this crappy pattern of not being a good dad and really embrace it and be great and have great kids, which sounds really easy, and is incredibly hard, to do. So I think that kind of breaking those patterns that you're exposed to is actually really inspiring. And how it is. It's hard because you don't have that pattern. You don't have that blueprint of a good parent. So I mean, for me, what it means to be a dad is trying to help someone be the best version of themselves, even if it means sacrificing the things I want and need in the moment, and teaching them to sacrifice for their own future. So how do I teach my kids to do the tomorrow version of themselves a favor today? So I have one kid that's really good at that. I have one kid that kind of gets it. I have one kid that's like, hey, I live in the moment, dad. So it's kind of all over the place. So that's what it is for me. Is how can I help them be the best versions of themselves, and just be cool people. Like I also wanted to be cool. Like nobody wants to hang out with someone that's like turd. So that's also a challenge.
Right. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Well,
Man.
in terms of being a dad, I mean, we've had that question on the podcast. It's kind of like our fundamental question.
Mhm.
So, uh, I wasn't expecting you to throw it back at us. So I don't know if it's changed for me.
Well, that's what I kind of started, or it's in some way changing, right? I mean, you know, through different phase of your kid, right? That part where you have to be stern, you have to be more disciplinary, you have to be a little bit more guidance and holding hand. And there are phases where you have to learn to let go, right? And it's a little bit too early for me still, but I learned to, I learned to, I learned to begin to do that at certain things.
Yeah, I see some similarities, maybe not obviously the same as Brian, because that's why we're here. We want the differences coming out. For me, I think everyone has that moment, and it's probably several moments in their life where you reach for something because you don't know what else to do. So that moment for me, and it sounded like that was with you and your dad, or you and your dad plus Liam the same year. For me, talked to both of you about this. It was my daughter. Jace was pretty much planned. Cammy wasn't as much.
Mm.
The second
But
one never is.
but it was her surgery. Uh, I I I'm like you, Long. I'm not an atheist either, but I believe in a higher power.
Mhm.
I think with Cammy, it it took me to a place where I needed to find more. I needed to find something more to believe in. I think I talked about this a couple of days ago, Long. At a certain point, when you have a kid going through a surgery, you just have to believe in the doctors. They're doing the right thing. You can only do so much for them. I mean, let them rest, recover after they're done with their surgery. And then what else do you do? So it's just leave it up to the higher powers, and then what else can you do? And I made a video about that.
Mhm.
What can you do? So it's for me, it was helping out in the community as much as I could, seeing people out in the street, giving them a buck or two, turning around, getting them like a fast food meal or something like that, give that to them. And then now more recently, and this is something that I promised I would do to um, Buddha and the higher power, that I would commit, what was it, 6 months of volunteer hours.
Mhm.
The total hours totaling to 108 hours. And there's a special meaning behind that those 108 hours that I couldn't specifically tell you, but that was the round number to take.
Yeah.
And my commitment was to finish those 108 hours in 6 months. And it 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 busies your mind. That's not maybe not a verb, but it takes you out of the situation you're in, but also kind of leading you to better things that can help people when you may not be able to think that you're helping in your own situation.
No, yeah, no, I remember our conversation. No, and I think that's something that very important to 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 um to remember, right? Yeah, that there are things that you do, there are things that you have decided to give up, right, and sacrifice um, for your kid, right? And it's pretty hard to do. Like not everyone, I would say that willing to do it. Like people have kids, but are you a dad? Are you taking care of them? Are you looking out for them? Are you being away? Are you being there for them? Right. So um, I really, respect, the decision that you make, man, and what you have done to sacrifice, right? To to keep the belief there that, you know, your kid will inherit the good karma that you do to the world, right? And I believe in that too. I think I grew up a little bit. My grandpa on my mom's side, a little bit into uh, Buddhism, and I visited a couple of temples back then, uh, and I think that listen to like a lot of scripture reading. I don't know if you buy any of that cassette when you go to Vietnam. When you go to a temple, they typically sell those cassettes where a monk would record himself reciting. Um, and if you understand Vietnamese and even deeper meaning, right? So I've done some of that as well. And well, kind of off topic, sorry.
No, I mean, I think it's right on topic. I think the other thing that people may not get, and I probably didn't get right away, it's when you're doing that volunteering and you're giving those things to people less fortunate than you, it's you have to think top of mind that it's not necessarily for you.
Mhm.
So when I give something to somebody or I'm taking, so what I do, I typically escort people at the hospital to where they need to be in the morning. It's typically to surgeries or prepping for surgeries in the morning. And while you're doing that action, you have to say it within yourself that this is for my daughter, or this is for my son to get better, or this is for my daughter to have better karma with whatever she's going to do in her life, or make sure that she's not going to have another surgery. She's going to be great. So that's the other thing. It's just having that on top of mind that it's not for you, because a lot of the time people do it for themselves to feel good. So that's the other kind of piece of it. But you did have a little bit of a segue there. You were talking about watching out for your kids. So Brian, did you have any follow-up questions you want to get in with this spiritual
Well,
part, or did you want to kind of get into
I think
the?
you can segue a little bit. I mean, the spiritual stuff, I think we could probably go down a rabbit hole
Mhm.
because I feel pretty strongly about that.
Yep.
As you all know, I think that belief can take you far and faith can take you even farther. So, I mean, both are important to me. So, I think teaching your kids that is valuable. And I think believing in something is incredibly powerful as well. And it's just enriching because there's sometimes you just need faith because life gets hard. So, especially with children, especially,
Yeah.
there's scary things, sending them to school, sending them with other people, like letting them just be without you is terrifying sometimes.
Oh yeah.
So you have to have that, where you got to believe the universe is going to give you the good back that you put out. So
So Long, I know that you had a question that you wanted to pose to us about that. So yeah, something that you're struggling with or a challenge in terms of your first one or Liam, getting
Right.
him ready for the world,
Hmm.
things like that. What was your
Right.
question?
Well, I think the question I have is really open-ended, but I would start with, how would you discipline your kid, right? I'm not looking more of the generic answer, but specifically trying to understand and get to know in a way of how different race and ethnicity, color, if you will, um, discipline your kid, teach your kid, showing them the word, showing them kindness, if there isn't, if they're even part of that, right? Um, um, so that was one of my questions.
like discipline, as in they're doing something you don't want, or teaching them self-discipline.
I think, that's part of everything. What are you teaching your kid, right? In terms of how to treat other people, how to show respect, in a lot of ways. Right? Yes, if they did something wrong, how would you handle that? So it's kind of open-ended question in that in a way, but I just try to kind of get it. What does that mean? What does that mean for each different cultures and ethnicities, from your perspective, from your own experiences, from what you see? Because I could only speak for myself, but also as some for in general for Vietnamese, right?
Okay.
Because I seen it there. I grew up in it. Um, I could speak on that, but I can't really understand or know very well of how why Americans teach their kid, how Black Americans teach their kid, and how Asian American in general is different from me versus the population that grew up here that's not Asian, right? So how would they
Me,
discipline and teach their kid, right?
yeah, me and you
So
could be
that's
different.
great.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Right. So I
So
think that would be good to know.
since I'm the I'm a little different than the other, I can jump into this. So I teach, each kid gets something different. Like, so since this is our first meeting, I have a 13-year-old boy, I have an 11-year-old girl, and I have an 8-year-old girl. Each one's their own person. My goal is to make them amazing, like not amazing for me, but amazing for them. So they have all the skills they need to be whatever it is they want to be, and to be self-sufficient and to forge their own path. Uh, I believe, like for me, discipline, I think, starts with helping them learn how to have self-discipline. So we do that. I do that through athletics helps a lot. Um, I do believe that boys and girls are different. Like I teach my son differently than I teach my daughters. The expectation is, I wouldn't say higher, it's just different. I believe that boys, like young men, need to be incredibly powerful to be incredibly kind. Because if you ran into guys that are gentlemen that are less confident, or they're in a position of power and they're sloppy and they're out of shape, they're just not nice people because they're compensating for that. So for my boy, in order to make him incredibly kind, which he is, and I get comments on this from not just family, but I get comments on this from other people for all of my kids. I got one yesterday when we were out with family where somebody didn't show up to a family event, and my two girls went and called her independently. I didn't even know this, just to check in and make sure that their aunt was okay. Like, hey, we miss you. We just wanted you to know you're here. I didn't even know. They just wanted to make sure she was included. So I think that part of that is that they have to understand what they're capable of. So I set very high expectations all the time. And if they don't meet them, that's okay. We talk about why didn't you? And then if they choose just to be some, like, lack of a better term, my kid's gonna be a butthole and there's gonna be a punishment for it. You gotta make it for the kid. So that's kind of how I do it. Like for my son, like I'm not a spanking kind of person because it won't work. Like my oldest is a combat athlete, and he's like, Dad, I'd rather just take the spanking because I get beat up all the time in wrestling anyway. So that's not going to work for him. The other two, just it would cause me more problems than anything else. So I find the punishment to suit it. And since I'm this is our last podcast, I'm very consistent. I don't really get emotionally high or emotionally low when they upset me. At least I try not to. I try to stay within a range of like, hey, I'm upset and here's why, and we'll talk through it, and then we'll talk about what is the cost of your actions. And generally it's going to be losing something. For my kid, like my oldest, it could be, hey, you can't train today, or we're not going to go to this event. And for him, he's not willing to risk those things. So he's generally pretty good. If he's going to do something out of line, like he'll make sure that the juice is worth the squeeze, so to speak. The other two are very similar because there's just the cost. Like there's consequence. If I do something at work that is inappropriate, there's a cost to that. And I just treat them the same. I was like, hey, like if you do this, if I do this, what happens to me? Okay. And then if you do it, here's what's going to happen to you. And I'm just very upfront about my expectations. If I don't know what to do, I just tell them that I'm going to make it like, hey, like whatever you choose, I'm going to ruin your day. I don't know what that's going to look like, but it's going to ruin your day, or it's going to ruin your week if it's big enough. And then I let them make that decision. And I'll ask them, like, why do you want to do that? And then we'll have that conversation about it. So we talk a lot, because I think that's the better you can communicate, the more dangerous you can be in as an adult. Because if you don't speak well, you're just going to get walked on. Where if I can speak well and be like, hey, I don't agree with this, and here's why. And even if I could do that at work, it's a little bit better. Or for me, like when I worked with, like Van and I worked together for a long time, when I kind of stopped caring, I stopped trying to talk my way out of stuff. I just like, okay, whatever you want, I don't care anymore. And then I would just do whatever. So I think it's a valuable skill. But I think that it's physical and mental training helps keep your kids in line and shows them the value of things. Your oldest is 6?
Yeah, my oldest is 6, turning 7.
Can he read independently? Like, yet? A little bit?
Slowly. I think he when he watched shows and things like us, or his cartoons and things, and I was and then he see things on the advertiser on the screens, and he kind of read them off like really quick. So I think he catching on a lot of words and readings. I think he got it from me that he don't like to sit down and read for more than 10 minutes. I think he getting better as reading. He'll be first grade in September. So
Nice.
So something that you might want to do, and I did this with my kids, that I thought was valuable, and my youngest is doing it right now, but I read it with them when they were little. there's a book. It's called Warrior Kid. It's actually written by Jocko Willink. And I read them a chapter a day when they were real little. Like we'd sit down in a little pile of people, and we'd read one chapter and then we'd talk about it. And it's a lot of lessons on, discipline and like how can I be better. And it was a really easy way to start having conversations and kind of directing them down the direction that I thought was valuable for them to learn a little bit of self-discipline and a little bit of overall, like, hey, how do I set a goal? If I want to do a pull-up, which seems really easy, for kids, some kids it is, some kids it's not. But if I want to do that, how can I start with the goal setting? And I think there's like 5 or 6 books, and my older 2 have read all of them. My youngest one's in the second one right now, and just kind of gives you cool talking points. So, yeah.
All right. So for me, my oldest is 2.5, so mine's not too complicated. We probably started with the typical, probably yelling, and with Jace, it was probably, if I remember, the first time that we tried to discipline him was he was putting his hand in the garbage and stuff like that, so we'd hit his hands. That did not work, and that did not make him happy. That did not make my wife happy. So we switched that. What I did was try to find some books. Audible was a very good friend of mine, and we went to timeouts. Timeouts were the basis of how we discipline, and it still is. And I think, Brian, when your kids were younger, you did the same.
Correct.
It was basically, I don't like that, or you're not supposed to do that. Okay, you're gonna have a 1-minute timeout. And it's basically they're gonna not like that and they're gonna cry basically. So you wait until they're finished crying. Or I think, Brian, with you, you typically hold their hands, so you have a space that they feel safe in. So until they calm down, and then you start that 1 minute. And
Correct.
I found that had results. We're still doing that. I think for me, we're still working on that kind of closeness factor where Jay still has a trouble calming down. So we're still working through that, but we primarily do timeouts. Or he's gotten older, and sometimes we let him listen to music. He likes to listen to Coco Melon music. And if he does anything, or anything that we don't like, we'll say, okay, we're gonna stop this. We don't typically put a timer on it, but he needs to calm down, and then probably a few moments later, we'll turn it back on for him. So, like Brian was saying, a consequence. So that's typically it. We'll have to figure out what's next after that while he gets older, but it'll probably be a lot of the same. It'll be consequences. But for you, Long, I mean, let's kind of get into what you are seeing, or what you do, and then I know you have a greater question in this with getting Liam prepared and
Right.
and getting him into the world.
Yeah. I mean, from my perspective, I mean, I'm still learning how to discipline our kids and get them ready for the world, right? I guess I grew up, my mom is the father figure, right? For me, and my sister is about 3 years older than me, and she took on the responsibility, that same responsibility as well, and that's for me and my little brothers. And then I took on this very similar responsibility to my younger brother as we grew up together, and he's only 2 years younger than me as well. And a lot of what I do now is what I learned from, I guess, growing up with my mom, right? There's a lot of spanking, right? I'm not gonna sugarcoat that right there. She's very old school, tiger mom, if you will, right? And there's time that I hated her. I hated her so much, right? many times. I would say
Yep.
there are tons of spanking. Um, I pretty much that's all I remember. Uh, but but a lot of that changed me. A lot of that helped shaping me. I was not a good kid in that regard. Um, I wouldn't say I grew up in a broken home, but it was a broken home. Right? My parents um, constantly fighting, right? To the point where physical become the picture, and my mom um, have gone to 3 different attempts uh, to kill herself, right? So that's what I grew up in, and to the point where the next thing you know, you're sitting in front of a judge asking you a question who you want to be with as 8 years old. Um, and from then, that's affected me a lot, right? And I think I gone through phases of being rebellious and doing things that I wouldn't say a good kid would do. Um, I would say without my mom being stern and being very disciplinary in terms of spanking, I wouldn't be where I am today. So I kind of see the differences, right, Brian, how you have narrated, and as well what not narrate, how you mentioned your experiences of disciplining your kid, and that have been very effective. I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know if that would have been working for me, knowing where I'm at, our backgrounds, our cultures and environment. I don't know if that would work for me. I wouldn't know that. I wouldn't say that it might not, right, until I actually experience that. And I think that's something today I learned from you, Brian, and from you, Van, that I will take that to my own little family and see that that would be a better path. But
So I do
for
think
like,
it's different. A couple call outs because like
yeah,
I as a kid got spanked. So I think like the old school, like because I was a little naughty. So I think that is something that I'm not saying that spanking doesn't work.
right.
Because it doesn't just I don't think it works for every kid. Um, and I think it depends on how hard your stuff is and what you have to shield your kids from, right? So I think for
Right.
you having to see things that are just hard, like they'd be hard for you today, they'd be hard for me, they'd be hard for anyone today because that's your mom's. That's going to have a negative impact. And then obviously, like if you make sure, like if you mess about, you find out kind of deal. So sometimes spankings can be warranted. I'm not saying they're not. Um, but I think it's how you structure your household can make a difference. And if you start it when they're really young and you're really consistent, I've had really good results with conversations. And again, I think physical training, like I did combat training, like so I did karate when I was a kid and like wrestling and all that jazz. And like I've implemented that with my kids now. I think that does help as well because it's a little bit different. But so yeah, so sorry to kind of jump in, but I was like,
No,
yeah,
you're
I
good.
want you to know, like it's you know, we're we're probably of an age where spanking was very yeah,
Popular.
not
I
all the
think I
time, but
think
every
I,
once in a while, like if I crossed the
Right.
line, I would definitely get a zinger. So
I think it comes to the point where there needs to be a discipline rather than not, because when a kid's misbehaving, they need to know that that's not the right thing to do.
Right.
And I think in terms of timeouts and consequences like that, I almost think of it as a mental consequence versus a physical consequence.
mhm.
So it's something, oh, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna have to sit over there. Or if you do this, you're just gonna get a whacking. So it's just one or the other. And like it depends
Right.
on how your kids are gonna react and like how you're gonna get results. And I know that might be a part of the culture thing that you're talking about, Long, where it
Right.
might be shush shush, you shouldn't spank your kids kind of thing. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they're just a a tyrant or like a terrorist
Yeah,
or something like that. You
yeah,
need to change something if timeouts aren't working.
right.
So
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it is a part of ongoing learning, right? In my opinion, how to discipline your kid. It's going to be forever changing because, because like Brian, like you said too, each, each kid is going to be different, right?